Now, the project we're going to introduce next is an example of a very fruitful and extensive collaboration that has seen many actors working together to achieve one of humanity's dreams, which of course is returning to the moon. In December 2019, we marked 50 years since humankind last set foot on the moon. Extraordinary, 50 years. ESA, NASA, CSI, ASI, JAXA, and many private companies from 10 different European countries are preparing for 2025. Astronauts back to the moon with the Artemis mission. And we're ready to write a new chapter in space exploration by marking the beginning of a new era with a new breathtaking challenge: crewed flights to the lunar surface in the future. Now, Artemis 1 will be, in fact, just the first in a series of increasingly complex missions to build a long-term human presence on the moon for decades to come. You don't need to close your eyes to this dream anymore, because it's going to become a reality, and all we need to do is listen to the words of our next speaker from NASA to talk about how these dreams are really becoming a reality. So please welcome to the stage Bill Hartwell from NASA Orion Program Office.
Good morning. I think we have a video that may play first.
We are in the United States, in the sunny state of Florida at Kennedy Space Center. Hi, I'm Kelsey Brennan-Wessels, and the European Space Agency, together with our partners at NASA, are getting ready to return to the moon.
ESA is playing a key role in NASA's Artemis program, which will bring astronauts back to the moon. The European Service Module, or ESM, will provide propulsion, power, and thermal control for the Orion spacecraft. When the first Artemis mission launches on an SLS rocket this year, ESM-1 will guide an empty spacecraft into orbit around the moon in a test of what's to come.
This massive structure is a crawler. This is going to carry the SLS rocket with Orion and the European Service Module out onto the launch pad.
So there'll be some slides coming up here in just a moment, and I'll get started. In the 1960s, the American space program landed humans on the moon for the first time. Today, NASA is planning to go back to the moon. This time, we're not going alone, but we're going together. Together with our international and commercial partners, we will send the first woman and the first person of color to the lunar surface and return them safely to Earth. We will establish a sustainable lunar exploration infrastructure to fuel scientific discoveries and to help lay the foundation for a lunar economy. And all of this we will do for the purpose of preparing ourselves for the journey to Mars, human journey to Mars. Many different elements must all come together to achieve the objectives of the Artemis program. And today I will highlight a few of these elements. First, I'd like to start with the Orion spacecraft. Orion is designed to carry 4 astronauts to lunar orbit and to return them safely to Earth. ESA has designed and built the European Service Module, or the ESM, providing oxygen, water for the crew, electrical power generation with 4 solar array wings, on-orbit propulsion systems for attitude control and orbital maneuvers, and thermal control for the Orion spacecraft. For the first time in history, NASA has entrusted an international partner to build a key component of our flagship spacecraft. And so when I say we are going together, another way to say that is we cannot go without the European contributions. NASA has signed a contract with SpaceX to develop its Starship spacecraft as an initial version of the human landing system. The contract includes an uncrewed demo flight, followed by the first crewed landing, planned for the Artemis 3 mission. Our intention is to work with commercial partners to have 2 providers for what we call the sustaining human landing system. This approach is similar to the one we used for the commercial crew and commercial cargo service contracts for the International Space Station program. The Gateway is a vital component of the Artemis program and architecture. It will serve as a multi-purpose outpost orbiting the moon and will provide essential support for the long-term human activity on the lunar surface. The initial capability will be provided by 2 NASA-provided modules launched together, the power propulsion element and the HALO module. Our international partners, European Space Agency, Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency, and the Canadian Space Agency, will provide elements to expand the capabilities of the Gateway. ESA will be integrating JAXA-provided life support systems and other equipment into the International Habitation Module, or IHAB. ESA will also be providing the Esprit refueling module and in some enhanced lunar communications systems. Together, these enhancements will significantly increase the capabilities of the Gateway. Along our development path of Orion, we have completed 3 significant flight tests, and we are getting very close to flying our next and most significant test yet. Artemis 1 will be the first integrated flight of the Orion spacecraft with the Space Launch System. Launch is targeted at the end of August or early September of this year. Then Artemis 2 will be our first crewed mission, flying around the moon for the first time since Apollo. Artemis 3 will be our lunar landing. Artemis 4 will be the first flight of the Space Launch System with the upgraded exploration upper stage, allowing delivery of co-manifested payloads together with Orion. On Artemis 4, Orion will deliver and dock the ESA-provided IHAB module to the Gateway. On Artemis 5, we will deliver and dock the ESA-provided Esprit refueling module to the Gateway. As I mentioned, Artemis 1 will be our first uncrewed integrated flight test of the Orion spacecraft together with the Space Launch System. It will fly a month-long mission in a distant retrograde orbit around the moon. Re-entry to Earth will be our first test of the Orion heat shield at the lunar trajectory speeds of over 39,000 miles an hour. 39,000 kilometers an hour, 24,500 miles an hour. In 2021, we completed the integration and testing of the Orion spacecraft at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. In October, we mated the Orion spacecraft to the Space Launch System, creating the 98-meter tall Artemis I stack. In April and again in June, we rolled the Artemis I stack out to the pad for testing. Earlier this month, we successfully completed our final pre-flight test called the wet dress rehearsal, and we are targeting launch in August or early September of this year. We should be announcing our launch date very soon. Now, Artemis II will be our first crewed test flight. It will be the first time astronauts have orbited the moon since Apollo. The Orion spacecraft life support systems will undergo a full test as the crew flies a loop around the moon and returns to Earth. We are targeting launch of Artemis II to be 2 years after the completion of Artemis I. For Artemis II, manufacturing, integration, and testing of the Orion spacecraft are underway at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Artemis III will be our first lunar landing. Orion will rendezvous with the human landing system in lunar orbit. The crew will spend about a week on the lunar surface before returning to their Orion spacecraft for their journey home. For Artemis III, the components of the Orion crew module are in production. The European service module is undergoing assembly and integration in Bremen, Germany. Artemis IV will be our first launch of the SLS with the exploration upper stage. This will allow co-manifested payloads to travel with the Orion to the moon, to the lunar orbit. On Artemis IV, Orion will deliver and dock the ESA and JAXA-provided IHAB to the gateway in lunar orbit. For Artemis IV, the crew module primary structure is under construction, and the primary structure for the European service module has already been delivered from Thales Alenia Space in Italy to Airbus in Bremen, Germany. So, in conclusion, the message is we have a lot of hardware in production, and the excitement is really growing. We are going to the moon, and we're going together. Thank you.